This is Today As It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, helping you through our timeline of the day's most important news. From the inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace to the investigation of Zorro Ranch, a New Mexico property once owned by Jeffrey Epstein. But first, we started the morning with our international correspondent in London, who gave us a look at the arrest of former Prince Andrew in the United Kingdom. We continue to follow the breaking news this morning from London, where police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. He's the former prince on suspicion of misconduct in public office. So we want to get to the very latest from London right now. Scripps News international correspondent Ollie Barrett live for us there. And Ollie, what is the reaction to this arrest overnight there in London?
I think in some ways, Holly, there is shock about what is happening because it is basically unprecedented. The last time a sibling of a monarch was arrested in this country was in the mid-1550s. I think many people have also been expecting that for some time there would be police involvement and the potential of questioning for Andrew. Police are stressing that he's not been charged with any crime at this point, and Andrew has always insisted that he is innocent of any wrongdoing at all. But certainly it is a moment that really rocks the institution of the monarchy here in the UK, and certainly is one that is a very difficult moment indeed for the royal family as well. The police have said that they're searching a couple of properties in Berkshire and Norfolk. Well, Berkshire is where Andrew used to live until he was thrown out of the Royal Lodge in Windsor by King Charles, and Norfolk is where he lives now on the estate of King Charles at Sandringham, and that is where police cars arrived this morning and arrested the brother of the monarch.
And Ollie, what are they looking into? I mean, there's a litany of charges against Jeffrey Epstein, from financial crimes to sex crimes. So where does this fall?
Well, there are a number of police forces looking into a number of different things here in the UK, such as private flights linked to Jeffrey Epstein that came in and out of the country, allegations of sexual offences too. This particular investigation relates to what Thames Valley Police are calling suspicion of misconduct in a public office, and that, we understand, is in turn related to the claim that Andrew may have been passing documentation and information to Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2010s when he was a UK trade envoy. Claims that he may have been sharing information that was privileged, that was confidential, that he only had access to because of his role as a trade envoy at that time. So that is what he will be being questioned about by police. As I say, he has always denied wrongdoing, but that is a potentially serious offence which, if it followed through to a conviction, could lead to a prison sentence.
And Ollie, you know, I have to ask, I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulty there, but I have to ask about the reaction to the Epstein files, because it seems to have been received much more urgently overseas than it has been here in the U.S. I mean, we have Jack Lang, France's former cultural minister, under investigation. Peter Mandelson, former British ambassador to the U.S., under investigation. Thorbjorn Jagland, the former prime minister of Norway, has been charged with gross corruption. But yet here in the U.S., they seem to be looking beyond it and saying, look, we've given you information, let's move on now. Why do you think that is?
It's difficult to explain why that is, but it's certainly the case, Holly, that journalists here in the UK for years have been pushing at this story. And so when the latest batch of documents were released, there were already various investigations by British newspapers and media outlets underway, which were then furnished with extra information that they could pursue. There's also the political pressure that's been building here in the UK on the government because of that appointment of Peter Mandelson to the US ambassadorial role, but also on the royal family as well. So when the latest batch of documentation was released, British journalists were pouring through it, searching for all kinds of names and stories that they were already looking at. And it seems that the pressure has also built on the police to follow up a number of leads too.
And Ollie, what's the reaction been from the royal family? Because for years now, there have been calls for the monarchy to be abolished in that country, saying they're really not needed anymore. So what's been the fallout? Has there been any word from King Charles or anybody else in the family?
We have heard from King Charles himself in a statement in which he says he has deep concern to hear about the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, but he says that the investigation should now be pursued in the proper way, and he says that the law will take its course. The other thing that King Charles has told us is that the family will continue in their duties in serving the country. We've already seen Queen Camilla out and about carrying out a scheduled event. We are also led to believe by palace sources that William and Catherine are very much in support of that statement that has been released by King Charles. It is a very difficult moment for them. Obviously, there have been calls for Charles to put even further distance between him and Andrew over the allegations when it comes to the links to Jeffrey Epstein. Another thing we're being told by royal sources, Holly, is that the palace, King Charles, were not made aware by police about the looming arrest in advance. So they would have heard about it when the rest of us did.
And finally, before I let you go, wanted to ask you about what people are saying on the ground there where you are every day, average, folks saying, is the monarchy necessary? Is this going to sort of reinvigorate the call for the abolition of the monarchy and just say, look, we don't need him anymore?
Critics of the monarchy will absolutely use this episode to make their case. That said, the polls have suggested for many years that the monarchy remains a popular institution. Now, that popularity may have been dented to a certain extent by these allegations, by this particular incident, but hard to predict exactly where we go from here and how it may potentially infect the reputation, for example, of King Charles or of William and Catherine or Queen Camilla. Hard to predict how that unfolds. Here at Buckingham Palace, it's very interesting because it's really mostly tourists rather than British people, and many of them are arriving, as they always do, to see the palace, to try and get a glimpse of the royal pageantry and perhaps even some royal vehicles or a horse and carriage or two. And many of them have absolutely no idea what's going on and are asking us what's happening.
All right, Scripps News international correspondent Ollie Barrett live in London. Thank you so much for that update. I know we'll be checking back with you in the next days and weeks to come. We appreciate it. All right, now let's take a quick look at some of the other major headlines from today. Bill Gates abruptly pulled out of delivering a keynote address at an AI summit in India just hours before he was scheduled to speak. The Gates Foundation provided no reason for the sudden withdrawal. The Microsoft founder has faced scrutiny in recent weeks over draft emails allegedly written by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, making claims about Gates. Gates has strongly denied those claims as false. And as for the summit itself, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pitching his country as a central player in global artificial intelligence. Modi welcomed leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron and the CEO of Google. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is also in New Delhi for the summit. He called for a $3 billion fund to help poorer countries build AI capacity.
Your discussions here will culminate in the global dialogue. But without investment, many countries will be locked out of the AI age. AI must be accessible to everyone. That is why, encouraged by the General Assembly of the United Nations, I'm calling for a global fund on AI to build basic capacity in developing countries.
Tech giants like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon have pledged tens of billions in investment in India's AI infrastructure. Just ahead on Today's It Happened, from President Trump's tariffs to birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court has a long list of high-profile opinions to hand down in the coming months. So stay with us for Scripps News legal correspondent Ava Joy Burnett for a guide to the court's outstanding cases after the break. Welcome back to Today's It Happened. Let's return to our briefing of the day's top stories. And it's been 18 days, and there is still no sign of Nancy Guthrie. The FBI says 84-year-old mother of Savannah Guthrie was kidnapped in the middle of the night on February 1st and has not been seen since. Investigators have searched all across the state of Arizona and have even reached out to Mexican authorities.
Scrutiny about people crossing from the U.S. into Mexico and the number of vehicles that are stopped is far less than vehicles coming the other way. So if you were only going one way, it might be a calculated risk you'd be willing to take just to get into Mexico, where far fewer law enforcement authorities would have been looking for Nancy Guthrie.
And here's video of the suspect spotted at Nancy's front door. Searchers believe he's about 5'9" and was carrying an Ozark Trail backpack from Walmart. A $200,000 reward is now being offered for information. If you know anything, you are asked to please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. And this just in, the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts, a panel made up of Trump appointees, has unanimously approved the White House ballroom proposal. The $400 million project has been the subject of controversy after the former East Wing was demolished in October, before construction plans were submitted to that oversight body. Trump wrote on Truth Social Wednesday that it will be, quote, the greatest ballroom ever built and fully paid for by American patriot donors, zero cost to our United States taxpayers. The National Trust for Historic Preservation has sued in federal court to halt construction of that ballroom. All eyes are on the Supreme Court in the coming days as justices may issue opinions on cases that could have widespread impact across the country. And among those cases are ones that could either expand or limit presidential powers now and into the future. Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett has more on some of the major cases the High Court is still considering. Good morning, Avajoy.
Hey there, good morning to you, Holly. Well, right now the U.S. Supreme Court is considering a long list of cases, and there's some high-profile ones, from tariffs to gun rights issues to whether transgender girls should be allowed to play on women's sports teams at their schools. Depending on what the High Court determines here, this could pave new ground for personal rights and then presidential power. The Supreme Court's calendar for the final days in February will be busy. The court will hear arguments in several cases. There's also the possibility the justices will issue decisions on highly anticipated cases. Outstanding decisions include one on tariffs. The justices will determine whether President Donald Trump has the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs on other countries. A win in this case could expand the president's powers, but a loss could force the U.S. to refund billions of dollars administration officials say they've already collected. The justices will also determine if the president is allowed to fire Lisa Cook, a Board of Governors member of the Federal Reserve. The Fed determines interest rates, and several former Federal Reserve officials said removing any board member could damage U.S. credibility on monetary policy. But in arguments last month, the U.S. Solicitor General said President Trump has the right to make changes at the Fed, and no court is allowed to review that decision, a claim Justice Brett Kavanaugh challenged.
So do you dispute that is, the real world effect?
I cannot predict what future presidents may or may not do, but the argument strikes me as a policy argument.
Well, history is a pretty good guide. Once these tools are unleashed, they are used by both sides, and usually more the second time around.
The High Court will also consider the matter of transgender athletes, including the case of a transgender teen who wants to compete in female track and field events at her West Virginia high school. States with these types of sports bans argue biological women and girls will be at a disadvantage when they compete against transgender athletes. Transgender athletes have argued banning their participation is a violation of their constitutional rights. And the High Court is also considering a gun rights case out of the state of Hawaii, which will determine whether gun owners will be allowed to carry their weapons onto private properties that are open to the public, even if they don't have the consent of those property owners. So think of places like stores that could be privately owned but open to the public, Holly.
Avajoy, let me ask you about birthright citizenship. That's where it determines whether babies born to undocumented migrants can automatically become citizens. That's also a very significant case. So where does that one stand?
Yeah, that's a really big case that we literally have been following for months now. It's worked its way through the district court, through an appeals court, and now it's at the U.S. Supreme Court. That case will be argued on April 1st. And as always, we will be there for those big matters. The U.S. Supreme Court, they are expected to issue all of their decisions by late June or early July. So we could have quite some time to continue to wait until they issue those big rulings, Holly.
And we know you will be on top of that. Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett live in D.C. for us. Thank you so much. Straight ahead on Today's It Happened.
I'm hopeful. It makes me hopeful. It makes me think like someone is, pursuing this in the right manner. Now we'll see whether or not the feds turn anything over.
And later.
And we do have some work to do with Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. And they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they've been told that very strongly.
Welcome back to Today's It Happened. Let's return to our briefing of the day's top stories.
More now on that story we brought you last week. It involves a 2019 email about the Zorro Ranch. That is the New Mexico estate where an alleged former Epstein staffer said 2 foreign girls were killed on that ranch. It is further alleged they were buried on the state property that was leased to Epstein. Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York. She's been tracking this story now for months. Alex, the state's land commissioner telling you last week she wanted to see this matter investigated. Since then, she's been interviewed by the New Mexico Department of Justice. What did she tell you about those conversations?
Well, she did say at times they were frustrating, but she said that they were thorough. They wanted to understand the process in which her team goes through, how land is leased, what does the renewal process look like. And she says she feels like the New Mexico Department of Justice really is following the steps to learn more about this particular situation. And after the interview that they had with her, the New Mexico DOJ sent this letter, I want to show it to you, to the DOJ in Washington asking for access to a complete unredacted version of the email. It's a 2-page letter where they're asking for the metadata and the identifying information in the email. They want to see any attachments referenced in the email. And by the way, those attachments, Del, were basically supposed to be videotape from inside of the Zorro Ranch that this person was using to prove that they once worked for Jeffrey Epstein. So they want to see those videos, and they want to see any other unredacted documentation, correspondence, investigative materials, internal memoranda, related records, anything pertaining not only to these allegations, but also to the Zorro Ranch and potentially connected victims. So it is a long list of information that they received. I asked the commissioner how she felt about all of this. Listen to what she told me. What do you make of that letter to Todd Blanche?
I'm hopeful. It makes me hopeful. It makes me think like someone is, pursuing this in the right manner. Now we'll see whether or not the feds turn anything over.
Can the New Mexico Department of Justice conduct an investigation without the blessing of the federal government?
They absolutely can. They need in order to get like the contextual information around the allegation and the email that the allegation was in, they do need cooperation from the DOJ.
And now the commissioner told me that since this story has been made public, they've already been receiving information from people who live in the surrounding area. Santa Fe, I believe, is about 30 miles away from the Zorro Ranch. Albuquerque is about an hour's drive from there. And so they're already getting tips from people who live in the area who have stories themselves about what occurred at the ranch.
So, Alex, what is next then for this investigation?
Well, they want to follow some of those leads. The commissioner told me she's already referred those to law enforcement officials in the state of New Mexico. But as far as the federal investigation goes, it's really a waiting game here in terms of whether or not the Department of Justice is going to turn over that unredacted email and any of the information that they want to see surrounding it. But one other thing the commissioner told me is that she is considering reaching out to the person who bought Zorro Ranch to ask about going onto the ranch and continuing the investigation there as well. That person is a former Texas state senator who is currently running for comptroller in Texas. That state senator has already said that he would be cooperative. There's also a commission that was just put forward by the state's legislature. They will have this calendar year to go through. They've got 2 deadlines, one in July and one in December, to put together a report about Zorro Ranch and the surrounding area.
Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller, live for us in New York. Alex, as always, we thank you very much. That slavery exhibit is back on at the Independence Mall in Philadelphia. The Trump administration had removed it. It focuses on the lives of 9 people once enslaved at George Washington's house in the city of brotherly love. The Trump administration argued that it alone could decide what stories would be told at National Park Service properties, but a federal judge disagreed and ordered it to be restored. She compared the Trump administration to the totalitarian regime in the dystopian novel 1984. That novel changed historical records to fit its needs. A massive wildfire started in Oklahoma, spread into Kansas, and then into the Texas Panhandle. It has since grown to more than 442 square miles. The Ranger Road fire has been classified as a mega fire and is only 15% contained. Fierce winds and extremely dry conditions sparked several wildfires across Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas this week. Oklahoma's governor declaring a state of emergency in 3 counties as that fire has destroyed a number of homes and buildings. 4 firefighters were injured, including 3 when their truck overturned.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
What we're doing is very simple, peace. It's called the Board of Peace, and it's all about an easy word to say but a hard word to produce, peace.
And later,
ICE needs to be reformed in a dramatic, bold, meaningful, and transformational manner. And if that doesn't happen, the DHS funding bill will not move forward.
welcome back to Today As It Happens. Scripps News end-of-day snapshot of the biggest stories. So let's pick up right where we left off.
President Trump speaking today here in Washington at his inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace. That meeting coming even as he contemplates possible military action against Iran. Scripps News senior White House correspondent Haley Bull is live right now on the North Lawn of the White House. And Haley, tell us more about the president's message to members of the Board of Peace, of course, juxtaposed against that warning for Iran.
Del, certainly a message balancing one of peace with his warnings for Iran. The president seeming to lay out a 10-day deadline for Iran to reach what he called a meaningful deal during his comments at the inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace, or warned of otherwise bad things happening. Now, the comments come as President Trump is continuing to weigh his options in regards to the next steps with Iran. As recently as Wednesday evening, we were told by a U.S. official that he has not made up his mind at this point. He was briefed from his special envoys on the outcomes of the indirect talks held with the Iranians earlier this week in Geneva. Talks that officials came out of seeming to indicate progress, but significant gaps remaining. The president saying this about those discussions.
As you know, Iran is a hot spot right now, and they're meeting, and they have a good relationship with the representatives of Iran, and, you know, good talks are being had. It's proven to be, over the years, not easy to make a meaningful deal with Iran. We have to make a meaningful deal. Otherwise, bad things happen. But we have to make a meaningful deal.
But amidst the military buildup in the backdrop of this, although the president touted peace efforts in Gaza during this inaugural meeting, the board serving as the oversight of governance in Gaza, a key part of the president's peace plan. More than 40 countries attending, though more than a dozen solely as observers, as a number of notable European allies as well as the Vatican have not signed on to membership. The president has laid out a vision for the board going beyond Gaza, suggesting in remarks today it could serve as a model for other conflict zones and as a mechanism of oversight for the United Nations, saying, describing it as, quote, looking over the United Nations, Dal.
Haley, are we learning any more specifics about progress in how Gaza is going to be put back together and governed?
Yeah, Del, there are a number of questions that remain, but we are getting some new details on the commitments being made. Financially, it includes $10 billion from the United States to the Board of Peace The president announced today as well that more than $7 billion from a handful of nations, though how that money will specifically be used is not clear at this point. Force-wise, the head of the newly created International Stabilization Force laid out a plan calling for 12,000 police and 20,000 soldiers. Major General Jasper Jeffers announced countries that have committed troops include Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania, while Egypt and Jordan, he said, have committed to help train police. But belying all of this are major questions as the administration works to move forward phase 2 of the president's peace plan, specifically the disarmament of Hamas, as Hamas militants have not indicated they would fully disarm, while a U.S. official said they are encouraged by what mediators have returned, Del.
Scripps News senior White House correspondent Haley Bowforce live on the North Lawn. Haley, as always, we thank you very much. Right now, that partial government shutdown continues, no end in sight. Both sides continue to go back and forth on potential changes on how immigration operations should be conducted. Should ICE continue to wear masks? Should warrants precede arrest? Scripps News congressional correspondent, our senior congressional correspondent, Nate Reed, joins us live right now. Nate, what is the latest at this hour? And I keep thinking about Groundhog Day and the fact that the groundhog said 6 more weeks of winter, but also 6 more weeks of gridlock, right on both counts.
It could be 6 more weeks of shutdown. At this point, we really do not know. Yeah. This could last an indeterminate amount of time. And the reality is, with Congress out this week, they didn't get much closer to reaching some sort of agreement on how to fund the government. In fact, the rhetorical war of words, if you will, only amped up this week between the White House and between Capitol Hill. Congressional negotiators, Democrats, saying the White House is just not taking this seriously, that they are not coming to the table with meaningful reforms that Democrats have pushed for. Again, Democrats have talked a lot about these common sense reforms. They've also said the White House is not offering common sense reforms. It's fair to say that Democrats all but accusing the White House of not negotiating fairly and honestly in these talks. The White House lobbing similar accusations right back at Democrats. Here's House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries just yesterday.
In terms of the state of play on the current proposal, we've responded. We've reiterated our perspective on the types of things that are absolutely necessary in order for a DHS funding bill to move forward, all anchored in this principle that ICE needs to conduct itself like every other law enforcement agency in the country. We need a dramatic change in policy. We also need a change in personnel. Kristi Noem's got to go. Why she's still around when Alex Preddy was killed in cold blood on January 24th is beyond me. It sends a message that these Republicans are not serious about doing the types of things necessary to rein ICE in.
And again, Congress is on recess this week. There was always the question of just how much negotiations would really be happening, Del. And at this point, it doesn't really seem like they really moved the needle rhetorically or on policy. And if they did, it's kind of been mum's the word. Remember the end of last week, a week ago today, Senate Minority Leader Schumer holding a press conference blasting what the White House has offered so far, but at the same time, not getting into exactly what they had been able to agree on. And what's interesting is, and actually I have some news for you here, not about the negotiations, but just in the last couple of moments, leaders Jeffries and Schumer have just announced what their message is going to be next Tuesday on the State of the Union evening. Abigail Spanberger, the newly minted governor of Virginia, will deliver the Democratic response to the State of the Union. It'll be interesting to see if she talks about this current war. Remember, there's a whole lot of federal employees in Virginia, TSA employees, FEMA employees, Coast Guard employees. Those are all affected as part of this current government shutdown. Abigail Spanberger in an interesting position to respond amid this ongoing shutdown.
Former member of Congress as well. Also, Caroline Leavitt says, from the White House, the podium, says she thinks the Democratic counteroffer is unserious.
That's exactly right. In fact, yesterday she cast a lot of doubt about whether they're even having these conversations with President Donald Trump. She said, to her knowledge, this has been staff-level negotiations between the White House and congressional Democrats. She pretty much all but confirmed President Trump not involved in these talks so far. Take a listen.
He hasn't had any direct conversation or correspondence with Democrat lawmakers recently. It doesn't mean he's not willing to. I'm just not aware of any conversations that have taken place. I do know the White House and the president's representatives have been in direct conversations with both Democrats and Republicans. He wants the government to be open. We've been engaged in good faith negotiations with the Democrats. Last night, they sent over a counter proposal that, frankly, was very unserious, and we hope they get serious very soon because Americans are going to be impacted by this.
It feels like Groundhog Day if the only word that Tom Hanks said was unserious. Again, both sides saying the same thing here. It'll be interesting to see if the State of the Union week actually gets anything shaken loose. And again, the fact that Democrats have picked someone who just flipped a governorship, very notable for that State of the Union response, and whether she'll address this as smoke clouds linger over Capitol. It looks like fog or something, Del, over Capitol Hill.
I hope it's fog, to tell you the truth. Scripps News senior congressional correspondent Nate Reed. Congratulations, by the way, on the promotion. Thanks for your reporting.
Straight ahead on Today As It Happened.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Joining us again on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your daily look at the day's biggest stories.
President Trump on board Air Force One at this hour, taking questions about former Prince Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, being arrested today in London. Let's listen.
Of Jeffrey Epstein will wind up in handcuffs too.
Well, you know, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. That's very nice. So I can actually speak about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing. To see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing. It's really interesting because nobody used to speak about Epstein when he was alive, but now they speak. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated. I did nothing. In fact, the opposite. He was against me. He was fighting me in the election, which I just found out through the last 3 million pages of documents. Yeah, please. Yeah.
You said today on Iran, bad things will happen if
Yeah,
Iran
bad
doesn't
things,
make
really
the
bad
deal.
things.
What will that
I'm not going to talk to you about that.
Okay, can you just know what is the goal if there is a U.S. military
Well, we're
strike?
going to make a deal, or we're going to get a deal one way or the other.
But with a military strike, is it to wipe out their nuclear
I'm not going to talk to you about that, but we're either going to get a deal or it's going to be unfortunate for them.
And you said today 10 days. Have you given them a deadline firm to make a deal?
I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
Mr. President, when you have the Board of Peace, obviously there's a lot of countries that you're trying to get on. What countries would you like to see join the Board of Peace the most?
Well, we have a lot that are on, and we have a lot that are going through the process of getting on. They have to get legislative approval, etc. And we've had billions of dollars put up already by the countries that are on. You saw some of the big players today. It's been very successful. Everyone's going to want to be on. Everyone wants to be on. Some have to go back to their legislatures to get approval.
Would you want like China, Russia, any of those
I
guys?
would love to have China and Russia. They've been invited. Yeah.
Something that got a lot
You
of
need both. You need all persuasions. No discrimination.
something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
The president can declassify anything that he wants to.
Well,
So if
maybe
you
I'll
want
get
to
him
make
out
an
of trouble.
announcement,
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
We know illegal aliens are real.
Yeah, illegal. Only illegals. What else?
based on what you've been told, what do you think happened to Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy?
Boy, it's so crazy. It's so bad. I didn't like when they were talking about the going after the pacemaker and you know, before they even started going after it, they're coming and reporting it. So if in fact they could do it that way, the person would say, well, I'm not going to let that happen, right? So bad things would happen if he not going to let that happen. I can't imagine why they would have done that. And just in terms of strategies, one little piece, I don't know, but we have to start reporting on other subjects also and see what happens. It's a very sad situation.
And with Iran, if the whole point of
I have to take off. I'll come back.
Thanks.
All right?
Yeah,
Or
thank
do
you.
I have to? Maybe I don't have to. Have a good
I
time.
think you have
Thank
to.
you.
I think you have to.
Sit down.
President Trump moments ago on board Air Force One talking about the arrest of former Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, arrested today in London, now released from jail after spending more than 11 hours talking to police there. The president saying that he has been exonerated in the Epstein files. That is not exactly true, as the Epstein files are still being gone over, not only by Congress, but with regards to the survivors. They want the FBI to look into those files. Exonerated would seem to indicate that he's been charged or at least accused of something, and so far he has not.
Coming up on Today as It Happened, with President Trump's approval numbers sinking, what impact will that have on the 2026 midterms this fall? Stay with us for analysis from Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty, which is after the break. Welcome back to Today as It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's continue our walkthrough of the day's top headlines.
At this hour, President Trump is in Georgia. I want to show you right now what happened just moments ago. He's at a local restaurant there, the Varsity, which is known for traditional hot dogs and burgers and fries. Pretty popular, in fact. He is expected to deliver a speech about what he's doing so you can afford those hot dogs and burgers and fries. This restaurant, by the way, in Rome, Georgia, is home to Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former congresswoman. The president asked, who do you want to take the seat she just vacated? We're still waiting for the response to that. Our political director, Andrew Rafferty, joins me right now. And crowded field down there to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. Very crowded, in fact. If they sold that many hot dogs, it'd be a good day. Has he put his thumb on the scale yet?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, Del, because I think a lot of voters in Georgia are wondering that as well. Here was a post that he put on Truth Social not that long ago, essentially saying that he supported an individual, a district attorney down there by the name of Clay Fuller. He put this up just a few weeks ago. This is on his Truth Social. Clay Fuller is my complete and total endorsement. But then just a couple days ago asked about his trip to Georgia, which is playing out as you and I speak here right now. Del, the president had this to say.
Well, we have a lot of people that want to take Marjorie Taylor Greene's place, and many, many candidates, and I have to choose one. And they say whoever I endorse is going to win. But we have a lot of good candidates who want to take her place.
So it seemed like he kind of forgot that he had endorsed. And you know what? He endorses quite a few, and there is quite a long list of candidates who are running in 2026 that he either has or is considering to throw his weight behind. But it is worth noting that, especially in primaries like these, really crowded field, no one, even the voters in that district, don't have a huge knowledge of the candidates. If you have the ability to say, I'm endorsed by Donald Trump, that goes really far, especially in places, conservative districts like the one that used to be Marjorie Taylor Greene's. In the general election, though, Del, it's a little bit more of a different story, but certainly in these primaries, that's huge.
He is supposed to be, and I will highlight the fact that he's supposed to be talking about affordability. The White House wants him to do that. Will it be a preview of the State of the Union address?
I think that is what the administration is sort of hoping for. Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, we hear her talk about this in interviews. That's kind of what she's pushing this administration towards, or this president, I should say. It is interesting. You heard him just a moment ago talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. So when he gives those more formal remarks here in a few moments, it will be interesting to see how much of his focus is spent on his former friend turned foe, the former Congresswoman. It will be also interesting to see how much time he spends talking about what he was doing earlier today, the Board of Peace. And I think this is a very concentrated effort by this White House to counteract some of the foreign policy focus that we've seen. We know that this president has been very focused in this second term on foreign policy, talking about solving wars, solving foreign conflicts. It's something that he has a whole lot more control over than the economy, than affordability, than some of these other issues that have plagued his presidency. And so that's maybe why he spends so much time on it. But for the White House, he's supposed to be on the road quite frequently. He's been doing this pretty rarely. So I think that there's a lot of folks, especially in the political operation of the White House, who want to see him do that sort of stuff more.
I'm going to use the word that has been overused so much it's not even funny. Unprecedented.
Yeah.
State of the Union will be on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Democrats say they're not going to go. They're going to counter-program the State of the Union address. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we just had some of those images from the last State of the Union where a congressman, Democratic Congressman Al Green, he had a walker or a cane, he was raising it and ultimately got thrown out of the chamber. You saw a number of Democrats last year hold up signs saying false. It was their way, I guess, to live fact check the president. But it just came off as sort of weak and pointless and a little bit disjointed. So I think what you're seeing is, number one, you have all these factions where there's going to be an event on the Mall, there's going to be one here in the Press Club, there's of course going to be the official Democratic response, which we now know as of a few moments ago is going to be given by Abigail Spanberger, the newly elected governor of Virginia. I do think, yes, there are factions within the Democratic Party. There are always factions when you are the minority, when you're out of power, when you're trying to figure out the roadmap back to the majority in both Congress and the White House. But I think it also does show that there is a certain energy about the Democrats, that there are so many events in a way that there really wasn't last time around, which of course was much fresher from the 2024 loss for Democrats and at a point where they were really debating which direction the party should go.
Question for RFK Jr., by the way. Anything at the varsity that we're allowed to eat?
Yeah, well, you've been to the varsity. I have not. And I don't think RFK Jr. has either.
No, I don't think he's going to. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty. Raph, thanks.
New economic data continues to underscore that we are in a K-shaped economy where upper-income households are continuing to see improvements while lower-income households and smaller businesses are falling behind. Walmart's earnings report highlighted that too. And meanwhile, other new data shows the impact of President Trump's tariffs and a potential turnaround in the labor market. Ahead of President Trump's State of the Union, the state of America's economy is in the spotlight. America's trade deficit jumped to $70 billion in December, according to new data out Thursday, much of that fueled by a drop in gold exports. Overall, last year's trade deficit was just over $900 billion, down slightly from 2024. Economists say President Trump's tariffs haven't substantially altered America's trade imbalance just yet.
This idea that we're going to see a significant reduction in the trade deficit, especially over a short period of time, definitely not the case.
206,000 people filed jobless claims last week, the fewest since early January. Those numbers beat analyst predictions, and they're coming on the heels of a stronger than expected January jobs report. But data from the past year points to a labor market that's seen slow hiring, with the exception of a few select areas.
The bulk of jobs creation's really been focused in two areas, healthcare and social assistance. So if you're working in those sectors, you probably are feeling pretty good. If you're working elsewhere, perhaps not so good.
Meanwhile, Amazon dethroned Walmart in earnings for the final quarter of last year. Walmart still reported strong figures Thursday and noted the majority of its gain came from higher income households. The CEO saying many lower-income Americans are still struggling.
For households earning below $50,000, we continue to see that wallets are stretched. And in some cases, people are managing spending paycheck to paycheck.
Thank you for spending part of your evening with us here at Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Have an amazing Thursday night.